Several witnesses notice his trance-like demeanor.
He seemed to be in a daze. He didn't recollect any of the details of what he had just performed, and he couldn't explain it. He was told what he had done, and he was bewildered.
Sirhan's apparent memory loss is seized on by conspiracy theorists. They are convinced Sirhan's a Manchurian candidate, hypnotized by the CIA to assassinate Kennedy, the culmination of 2 decades of mind control research. But why would the CIA want Robert Kennedy dead? Sirhan's attorney believes there are 3 motives. Number 1, Vietnam.
Bob Kennedy was diametrically opposed to the war in Vietnam. The ending of the war in Vietnam would have gone adversely to the bottom lines of some of the major corporate entities in the United States who were making fortunes on that war.
Reason number 2, Cuba.
Bob Kennedy himself had come to the conclusion that the time was ripe for a deal to be done with Castro in Cuba. And that was not making him very popular.
And finally, his own brother's death.
He was going to reopen the investigation of the assassination of his brother. That was making a lot of people edgy.
Conspiracy theorists believe that Sirhan was hypno-programmed by the CIA. Before Sirhan's trial, psychiatrist Bernard Diamond examines him many times.
That girl, I followed her. She led me into a dark place.
And Diamond was convinced that he was programmed, and this programming was very intensive and very, very deep into his psyche, and it has remained with him to this day. To this day, he doesn't know what happened.
Programmed amnesia is the key ingredient to a Manchurian operation. Sirhan also claims he's been hypnotized before. He'd recently been studying the Rosicrucians, an ancient mystical order devoted to self-improvement. Hypnosis is one of the tools they teach for focusing the mind inward.
Sirhan Sirhan described some self-hypnosis meditation type exercises, and his journals have a lot of repetition, RFK must die, RFK must die, which looks to me like trance state repetition, focusing on the mission, focusing on the mission, focusing on the mission.
In the Manchurian Candidate movie, the assassin's mission is triggered by the Queen of Diamonds playing card.
But it could be anything. The CIA documents describe hand signals, tones over the phone, words. So you hypnotize somebody and you can program in any trigger whatsoever to flip them into their Manchurian Candidate state.
Numerous witnesses report seeing a woman in a polka dot dress talking to Sirhan in the pantry moments before the shooting.
She had a dress with polka dots on it.
How about this girl's hair? What color was it?
Brown.
This mysterious woman is believed by conspiracy theorists to be Sirhan's Queen of Diamonds, giving him his cue to fire. The hypnotized Sirhan allegedly pulls out his gun on cue, but does not fire the fatal shot.
You have to understand, there's so much pandemonium. It's almost as though Sirhan was programmed to distract the entire group that was there, allowing someone to do what had to be done in terms of actually killing Kennedy by shooting him in the back of the head.
Ballistics evidence seems to support this claim. Kennedy is struck by 3 bullets, all fired from the rear. The fatal shot is fired within inches of his skull, but Sirhan never gets that close.
There's no account that pushes him any closer than 3 or 4 feet away from Bob Kennedy in the front of him.
Adding to the alleged evidence for a conspiracy is the number of bullets fired. Kennedy is struck 3 times. 5 bystanders are also hit, but several more bullet holes are identified in the doors and ceiling, suggesting at least 10 are fired. Sirhan's pistol, a .22 caliber, only holds 8 rounds. more than 8 bullets, would require a second gun. Historian Mel Ayton has spent years investigating the assassination. He believes that Sirhan could have shot Kennedy at close proximity from behind, even while standing 3 feet in front of the senator.
When Kennedy was moving through with the crowd through the pantry, he turned to his left to shake hands with the kitchen workers.
Kennedy reaches across with his right arm, presenting Sirhan with the right side of his body as a target.
And then Robert Kennedy was shot under the armpit because obviously his right arm was being raised as a defensive reaction. And then the arc of the gun was pursuing Kennedy's head as Kennedy was going down.
To determine the number of bullets fired, Ayton sends acoustics expert Steve Barber a copy of the only complete audio recording to exist of the assassination.
All of a sudden I hear pop, pop, pop. And then a blood-curdling, high-pitched female scream just after the shots.
2 unidentified thumps occur just 3 seconds before the first pop.
I rule thump number 1 completely out. It sounds like the microphone has bumped into something. Thump number 2, I think, is either a door banging into a wall or a balloon exploding.
A graph of the recording clearly shows a spike each time the gun is fired.
Distinctly, 8 bullets were fired. If the conspiracists believe there are more than 8 gunshots, then they're going to have to explain the lack of those gunshots being captured on this recording.
There is no doubt in Ayton's mind that Sirhan was the lone assassin, and the CIA had nothing to do with it. Many hypnosis experts question the entire validity of the Manchurian candidate theory.
I don't think that a trigger that would move someone into hypnotic state where they would commit murder would really work.
The CIA itself apparently reaches the same conclusion. By 1968, after investing millions of dollars, the agency abandons its research into programming a hypnotized assassin, concluding it can never work.
You do not relinquish your will, you do not become a dupe, a patsy, or a mindless automaton, despite some public beliefs that this may be the case.
In 1972, Sidney Gottlieb terminates the agency's research into the biological and chemical control of human behavior, citing its decreasing relevance to clandestine operations. The American public remains oblivious that the CIA's mind control program ever existed. But on June 11, 1975, the Washington Post reports on a civilian scientist who was unwittingly given LSD and jumped from a Manhattan hotel window. No names are mentioned, but the Olsons immediately recognize the story of their father's death 22 years ago. They decide to go public. All the major networks attend, as the Olsons add Frank Olson's name to the list of victims of the CIA. The source for the article describing Frank Olson's death is the Rockefeller Commission report. Triggered by Watergate, it's a presidential inquiry into illicit domestic activities by the CIA. The Olsons decide to sue the agency for their father's wrongful death.
And within 10 days, we were sitting in the Oval Office of the White House getting an apology from Gerald Ford himself.
The family receives $750,000 for Frank Olson's death. Spurred by the media reports, Congress launches its own investigation into the CIA, chaired by Senator Frank Church. Sidney Gottlieb and Robert Lashbrook are summoned to testify.
We had a hypnotist do some experiments, primarily to see what the limitations of hypnosis might be. Can you make a person do something under hypnosis that he would not ordinarily do?
The revelation